Guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of August. It was a good month. I read 11 books. That's a good month. It was good, and I read some really good things, so can't complain. Had a couple things that didn't work out quite so well for me, but it's fine. That's reading. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I possibly can. Okay, first one I'll talk about so briefly because I literally just gave you all of my thoughts on this one, but that is Dune by Frank Herbert. This was my last 5-star prediction book that I needed to read, and I just posted our 5-star follow-up. So I just talked about this one, but long story short, I thought it was too long. I got lost in a lot of the details because it was so descriptive, and I felt like this could have been a lot shorter and been more fast-paced and would have kept me interested a little bit longer. I did like the storyline though, and I plan to watch the adaptations for sure. But I did give this one 3 stars. Okay, so the next one that I read was The Girls of Summer. This is by Katie Bishop. This is one that I got from NetGalley, and I listened to this on audio, and this one was narrated by Annabelle Schooley, and she was really, really great. So this follows a woman named Rachel, and when she had just graduated high school, she and her friends went on this little, celebration trip type thing. And they went to the Greek Isles. And while they were there, they ended up connecting with this man named Alistair. He was very handsome. He was older, mysterious. He's like a big deal on this island. Like everybody knows him. And he and Rachel form a connection, and he invites her to his house for this big party. He's famous for his parties that he throws. So she and her friends end up going, and she basically gets kind of sucked into his world and becomes a little bit obsessed with him. They start this romance. He told her to keep it quiet because not everybody's supposed to know, and blah, blah, blah. And you're following 2 different timelines. So you're following Rachel in the time when she is with him and what's going on. You're seeing what's going on and you're understanding what's going on, but she's choosing to ignore things and being naive about what's going on because she was very young and she was just all about him. So that was very interesting to kind of see, like, as an adult, you're reading this and you're going, honey, this is not good stuff. These are bad things that are happening, and these are red flags, and you're not picking up on it because Rachel chooses to stay in the Greek Isles. She never goes back home. She stays there and wants to be with him. You're also following Rachel in the present timeline where she is remembering this time because she runs into somebody from her past who was part of that whole situation. And so now she's kind of having these memories of it, but she's married to somebody else, and, their marriage is having some issues as well. And so you're kind of seeing her in both of the situations, and then seeing the present Rachel looking back on that time and understanding what was going on and how she's dealing with that now. And then also dealing with what she's going through with her marriage because they are not having a good time. And something also happens in the past timeline that you're kind of leading up to that. And so you find out what that is and all that good stuff. But I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was good. I was very intrigued the entire time. I really liked the characters. I liked the way that it was told, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, this next one I actually am going to keep very brief as well because I've already talked about this one, but that is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is the first book in the Burning series. I recently wrapped this up on my Was So Excited book haul revisit that I've been doing because I did read it, and then I have since picked another one to work on. And so I kind of talked about it in there. So I'll leave that link down below if you guys haven't seen it yet. But this is a fantasy book, and it is epic. It really, really is. So this follows a young boy named Tao, and we are following him in really kind of a journey of himself. And he is living in this society where the men are expected to join the military. You're going to be a fighter. You have to do this. That's how the society works. And you see him flip from, I don't want anything to do with this, to this is my entire life now because I'm going to get revenge on everybody around me and everybody who has done our family and our village wrong. And you really see him hone in on this revenge. And oh man, it was very intense. I loved it. There are dragons in here. They are not the main plot point, but they do make appearances. and they serve a purpose, but don't go into this thinking there's dragons all over the place. There's not really, but the dragon thing is really cool, like the role that they play here. And yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I read this with my friend April, and we both loved it, and we're going to read the second book together as well. And yeah, so 5 stars. And then I finished up a book that I had started last month, and I didn't quite finish it, but this was for Catch-Up-a-thon. And the last one that I had to read was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. And I just didn't finish it before the end of the month, but I rolled it over into August. This one is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. This is an author that I want to read everything, and I'm getting very close to being done with that. And of all the books of his that I haven't read yet, this was the one I was most excited about because this is a Lizzie Borden inspired tale, and I loved it. This was 5 stars. I loved this so much. So this follows Kit and Lenora. Kit is a caretaker. She has run into some issues with her job and is taking a job now where she is being the caretaker for this woman named Lenora Hope, who is very infamous in their town because one night, a very long time ago, her entire family ended up dead and murdered, and she was the only survivor. Therefore, bring in the Lizzie Borden thing, everybody assumes that she did it, but there was never evidence to convict her of these crimes. But she has lived her entire life with the stigma that she did it. And now Kit really has no choice but to be her caretaker because she doesn't really have any other options. It's either that or you don't have a job, and she needs the job. So she goes to this house that is on a cliff, and she is going to be the caretaker for this woman who very possibly murdered everybody in her house. Now, Lenora has had multiple strokes, so she doesn't have a lot of use of her body. The only part of her body that really she has control over is her left hand. And so she's very immobile. She's in a wheelchair. She can't, go to the bathroom. She can't shower by herself. She can't really do much. So Kit is very much, needed for her well-being. Now, Kit moves into this house. She is meeting the caretaker. She's meeting the woman who runs the estate. She's meeting the chef, all these people who have been part of Lenora's life for a long time. And she's starting to kind of piece some things together. And then one day Lenora lets her know, in the only way that she can, that she wants to tell her the story of what happened. And Kit is like, do I really want to know? I kind of do. I kind of don't. But you see things start to unfold. You see Lenora give her bits and pieces. So some things Kit is trying to have to piece together herself, and she's trying to have to do her own research. And we don't really know who's telling the truth here. Is Lenora telling the truth? Is, the chef telling the truth? Is the caretaker telling the truth? No one really knows. So it's a whole lot of that. It was so good. It was so good because I was sitting there trying to piece stuff together too. But yeah, Riley Sager, loved it. Okay, so the next one that I read is one that I read on my Kindle. I got this from Kindle Unlimited, and that is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. This is the first book in a series. It's called The Cat and Mouse Duet. So there's 2 books. And I picked this up because this is a very high volume seller in our bookstore. We do have the paperback copies of this. It is independently published, but it sells really, really well. People come in looking for this book and the sequel all the time. And if we have it in stock, it sells. So I was curious. I knew that it was a dark romance. So we're going there for a minute. So I knew that going in. I've read some dark romances before. I'm not against them. I enjoy them every so often. I have a little bit of a list of ones that I would like to check out, and this was one. So this one follows Adeline, and she is moving into her grandmother's old house. Her grandmother has passed away. She left the house to Adeline, so Adeline is moving in. The house is a little creepy, but she loves it. And so she's moving in, making it her own, all that good stuff. And then she starts getting a feeling that someone's watching her. like just kind of that, hairs on the back of your neck stand up, someone's watching me type thing. She keeps getting those feelings. And then she sees that someone is watching her. She has a stalker. And it escalates, to the point where he's breaking into her house. She never knows where he is or what he's doing. She, when he breaks in, sometimes she's there and she had no idea. Maybe she was sleeping. And so it starts really getting to her, and she starts wondering if, is she making this up in her head? Like, it's kind of to that point, because she keeps calling the cops and they can't do anything. And yeah. And then, something happens and they actually have an encounter. And then they have many encounters after that. So this is a very adult book. So lots of graphic sexual encounters. And it's basically she's falling in love with her stalker is what it is. But he is definitely stalking her. Now, he is a very interesting character on his own, because his job is actually a really good job. He does good things, but then he turns around and stalks Adeline. So it's very interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. And I really enjoyed it. And you see these two kind of build a relationship, but it's still kind of like, I don't know. It's still dark, and Adeline is, she's a dark person too. So, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And the reason it was 4 is I knocked off a star for some of the dialogue that was, I think, supposed to be sexy, was kind of cheesy. And I would read lines, in the middle of like a sex scene, and I'm going, if my husband said that to me, I would probably laugh in his face. Like, no, that is not a sexy word. What are you doing? So some of that was there. And then there were descriptive words that were used over and over and over again. And I think that was just, this is independently published, so there wasn't a whole lot of editing going on professionally. And so like, the same word would be used to describe different things over and over and over again. And I'm just like, okay, can we come up with a different word? Like I was reading the same stuff over. So there is that. This is a very long book. It's over 600 pages. I will be reading the sequel, maybe even in September, I'm thinking. And that one is over 600 pages as well. It's a little bit longer, but but it's only 2 books. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. Okay, the next one that I picked up is The Minuscule Mansion of Myra Malone. This is by Audrey Burgess. Now, this one was a gift from my friend Candace, and I also have it on NetGalley, so I did have it on my Kindle as well. And then I ended up listening to it. So this was narrated by Christine Lincoln. She did a great job. It was a really good audio. So this one was also on my summer TBR, which was nice. I think I pulled a prompt for a character's name in the title, so Myra Malone. So we are following a woman named Myra, and she lives in Arizona, and she has built this life and this online presence by building this mansion. And it's a mini mansion, so it's not a dollhouse. It's not a dollhouse, but it's like a miniature scale house. And it has, it was like a hobby for her. She really just enjoyed doing it. And then it turned into this whole thing once she started writing blog posts about it and sharing pictures and doing all this stuff. And it became like this phenomenon that people were starting to follow, and people were starting to try to emulate what was going on in her mansion and the furniture that she was using and her decorations. And people were trying to do that in their own houses. And it became like inspiration for how people were decorating their houses, which is really cool. Until we meet Alex. Alex lives in Virginia, and he works for his family's furniture company. And someone comes in looking for a piece, and they're, looking around, and they see something that they really like, and they're like, oh, this has a very mansion feel to it, and used it as an adjective. And he was like, what are you talking about? And she introduced him to Myra's blog post. And as he's looking at it, he looked at it and he said, this is my house, down to the bedspread that's on the bed. Like, this is my bed. I sleep in it. Those are my bed sheets. That's like everything about this house was exactly what he lives in. And he's like, how in the world does this woman know exactly what my house looks like? I don't know her. I have no connections to her at all. And so he 100% reaches out to Myra and is like, bleh. Like, what in the world? So they start corresponding back and forth. Myra is a very, very private person. She has reasons for that. But then you're also going back in time and you are learning the history of this mansion that Alex lives in with his family and how, that mansion came into their family and how his father grew up. And that stuff was honestly really, really heartbreaking. They had a really hard time growing up, and his father is not a great person, and you see why. But yeah, so it was very good. I really, really liked it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It wasn't like great, amazing, can't stop talking about it, but I did really enjoy it. So it was good. Except for the fact that it used my most hated line twice. 2 times. Same book. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. 2 times. 2 times in this book. And I 100% yelled at Candace. Okay, the next one that I picked up was Dark Corners by Megan Golden. And this one popped up on audio for me. I had requested it from my library and it came through, so I went ahead and started listening to it right away. And this one was narrated by January Lavoie, who I love her. And this is the second book that follows a podcaster, a true crime podcaster. So the first book that featured her was The Night Swim, which I read and really, really liked. And I liked this one just as much. So we are following Rachel Kroll, who is a true crime podcaster. And there is a case that happens where this man was arrested for basically being a serial killer. It is thought that he has killed multiple prostitutes. And the problem is they haven't been able to really nail him on that. They got him on something that they were able to arrest him for, but they couldn't nail him down for the murders. It was just one of those things where it's very coincidental that he happened to be in these places and happened to be, in these situations. So they just kind of automatically pinned the murders on him as well. But that doesn't hold up in court, right? So he's about to get out, and Rachel is called to go down to Florida where he is being held because her name came up when he was visiting with somebody. I really liked this book. I thought the pacing was really good. I liked the little, I don't want to say knock, but the kind of a little bit of a commentary on, like lifestyle influencers and fitness influencers, because that's a big part of it. And just, some of it takes place at an influencer convention. So everyone's just like over the top. I thought that was kind of funny. Not to say that influencers aren't important. I am one myself, but it was just kind of funny. It's a little tongue in cheek there, but I liked how everything unfolded. We also are getting another viewpoint that I'll leave a little bit mysterious, that viewpoint was very interesting. And the only thing I really didn't like about this book is that there is a love interest, and I really just didn't think it was necessary. I was just kind of like, meh. So I kind of wish that part was left out. So it was good. I liked it. It was 4 stars. Okay, the next one that I read is another NetGalley book, and that is Untethered Sky. This is by Fonda Lee. This is a fantasy novella. It was about 150 pages. And I had not read anything by this author, even though I've been wanting to. And I actually ended up really enjoying this one. Even though it was short, it was a good story. The way that she wrote it, I was really into the world and I understood it. So this follows a world where there are people who raise these really, really large birds called rucks. Kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say they're almost like dragons, but they kind of are. Like, you can ride them and you train them, and, they are bigger. They are much bigger than humans. They are huge, really, really large birds. And you train them in order to take them out into like the woods and into different villages and stuff in order to kill dangerous creatures. And there is a certain dangerous creature that is very like they're killing machines almost. If you come across one, you're probably not going to survive. And then these creatures have been getting into villages and killing people and doing all these things. So these rucks are trained to take them out, and they're really the only things that can kill them. So the writer's purpose in life is to train these birds and to take them out, and you form a bond with your bird, although it is a wild animal, so you never know what could happen. So that I really felt the danger in, like when they would go out and do all these things, like, oh my gosh, is the bird going to like leave? Is it going to fly away? Or, is it going to attack somebody that it shouldn't be attacking because they are very large, dangerous birds? And has she done enough to really, have control? So yeah, it was really good. It was really good. So we follow one girl named Esther, who is a trainer, and you see her bond with her bird and going out and doing all the hunting and doing all the things and the friendships that she's making. And there's a political system that's in there as well. So like there was a lot in a very short amount of time, and I really enjoyed it. Just the way it was written was fantastic. And I definitely want to read more from this author now. So I did give it 4 stars. But yeah, it was really good. Okay. Now we're gonna go on a downswing here. So I read another NetGalley book, one that came out this year. It's called Bear With Me Now. This is by Katie Shepherd, and I listened to this on audio. So this is narrated by Savannah Peachwood, who did a great narration of the book. So this one is set at a wellness retreat that is in the wilderness. And we are following a man named Tegan who goes there with his sister. His sister actually has substance abuse problems. Tegan does not. Tegan has panic attacks that he hides. And he ended up in the hospital with a panic attack. And because of that, his sister says, we need to go and relax and, just be stress-free and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to go to this wellness retreat. Okay, got it. So he's there, but he keeps thinking about work because his work is kind of imploding around him, and he is in danger of someone trying to take his job and all these things. So he feels like he needs to be there. Well, he ends up meeting a girl named Darcy that works at the wilderness retreat. She's actually kind of a groundskeeper there, and they form a connection and start spending some time together. She takes a lot of little snippets of conversations and pieces together that he's an alcoholic and that's why he's there. No. And he told her multiple times, I am not an alcoholic. That's not why I'm here. Darcy doesn't listen to him and continues to believe and tell him that he's an alcoholic, to the point where she's making him listen to these podcasts about the 12 steps. And he's like, I'm not an alcoholic. You're just in denial. Okay, so that's just one problem I had with the book. That Darcy didn't listen. Anyway, so they form this bond. They're spending time together, blah, blah, blah. And he ends up getting phone calls about work. And he's like, I need to go home. I have to be at my job or I'm going to lose my company. In order for them to be able to go where everybody feels safe, Darcy offers to go with them to be his sober companion because he's not an alcoholic, but he's an alcoholic. Okay. He goes along with this because he just wants her to come because they have built this connection and he wants to be with her. So he goes along with the farce that he's an alcoholic. Second problem I had with the book. Then I have so many problems with this book, you guys. Like, we're just going to have to get into it. So they go back and, he's going to work and she's going with him because he can't be by himself because he might get a drink on the way home. He's not in danger of doing that. So the first time that they're intimate, Tegan is on these medications that give him erectile dysfunction. He has issues with that because of the medication. They navigate that, whatever. Tegan Ian decides he's just going to go off the medication, antidepressants. He's just going to go off of them so that he doesn't have that issue with Darcy. Does he consult a doctor? No. He's just going to go off you don't just go off your medication without consulting your doctor. Problem number 3 I had with the book, and then throughout the time that they're there, Darcy is back and forth between, I can't leave your side because you might, look at a glass and want a drink, to, I'm going to go disappear for 5 hours. Hope you're okay, because I'm going to go do this. I'm like, what? Problem number 4 I had with the book. I just had so many problems with this book. I just sat there and I was like, what are any of these people doing? This is kind of terrible. So there was a ton of miscommunication. There was a ton of lying. There was a ton of, I'm actually telling you the truth and you're not listening to me. That's how it started. Darcy was so stubborn, she couldn't see past her own face, and it drove me nuts. She was so aggressive. It drove me nuts. I don't know. I did not like this book at all. I gave it a 2, and now I'm kind of like, is it a 1? Like, it might be. I don't ever give out 1 stars. I'll leave it at a 2, but I did not like this book even a little bit. No. And then a couple days after I finished this book, I got an offer email from the publisher for her next book. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm good. No, thank you. Okay. So one more on the downswing and then we'll end on a high note. So the next one that I read was How Can I Help You? This is by Laura Sims. This is one that I got on audio as well because it was available to my library, and it's one that I had from NetGalley. This was actually on my most anticipated list of this year. So the audiobook was narrated by Carlotta Brenton and Maggie Meg Reed, who were both very good. So this follows a librarian, and she is working at a public library. However, her past, she was not a librarian. She was a nurse, and she ended up literally running from her job, like in the middle of the night, up and disappeared because of something that happened at work. And so she was kind of forced to leave and move and start over, new identity, stuff like that. So she is living as a new person and as a librarian in this quiet, small little town, and she loves it. Enter a woman who comes in and is hired as the new reference librarian. Her name is Patricia, and she is an author, but not really. She wants to be an author, and she had tried to be an author and struggled, so she never, she quit, basically. Just said, this isn't working for me. I'm getting tired, and I'm just going to stop. So she ends up leaving her life in Chicago to come live in this small town, which I never really understood why. We never really got why she was there, but she had a boyfriend and everything. And so she dropped everything and moved. And so you see these two women, working together. One day a patron comes in to the library and, causes a scene. And not too long after that, that patron ends up dead in the bathroom. Somebody finds her body in the bathroom. And this I'll say, from the synopsis of the book, I thought it was, a patron dies in the bathroom of the library, but one of the librarians just knows that the other one is responsible for it. That's what I thought we were getting. But not really. Not really. That wasn't what this was. It was definitely, one of the librarians has a dark past. The other one feels like she has a dark past that she's hiding. So she starts to kind of piece some things together. She ends up using her as a muse for a book. And she starts writing, she gets inspired to write again. So, and the more she finds out, the more she's disturbed about what this woman is supposedly had done in her previous life. but at the same time, she's not saying anything because it's giving her writing life. That's what it was. And it goes even deeper than all that stuff. So I don't feel like we got what the synopsis told us at all. She was never the librarian was never like a suspect at all. And I thought that's what it was, but no. I will say that this was a character study more than anything. There wasn't any like really big actiony, interesting scenes to keep the plot going. It had a plot, but it was just kind of there and it wasn't interesting, I guess you could say. So I don't know. Initially I gave it a 3 when I rated it, but then I went back and changed it to a 2 because the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like, and the more I felt was unanswered, and the more I kind of went, what was the point of any of this? I felt like there wasn't a point to any of it. There was a lot of things that just weren't explained, and I was like, but why? So that's what it was. Yeah, I didn't love it. I gave it a 2. I didn't even really like it, to be honest. So that was really disappointing because it was on my most anticipated list this year. And yeah, not so much. Okay, we are going to end this on a high because this book I loved. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I finally read it, you guys. This has been on probably like 3 different TBRs this year, and I finally read it, and it was so good. It was so good. So I started reading this initially, and I got about 9 chapters in, but I found myself not having much time to sit down and read, and I was getting anxious about that because I really just wanted to read this book because I was loving it and I just didn't have the time. So I ended up switching to audio. I was a little bit nervous about that because I was afraid that maybe the narration would not highlight how good this man's writing is because his writing is so good, but that's not the case at all. It was fantastic. The narrator for this one was Kurt Graves, and he was phenomenal. So very happy about that. Very happy that I was able to switch and, consume it that way. This follows a man named Wallace. He passes away pretty early on. Wallace was not a good man. He did not treat people with compassion. He was very dedicated to his work to the point where he was definitely a workaholic. He pushed everybody in his life away. He didn't feel the need to have strong connections to people. He did not care about people's feelings. He felt like the bottom line was more important. He didn't understand how people didn't live their way, live their lives the same way. So he was not a highly sought after person in life. So he passes away. And he wakes up and he is at his own funeral. And he's like, what's happening here? So he realizes that he has died. He's realizing that people around him can't hear him or see him, except one person. One person can hear him and see him. And so he, she ends up, taking him in and telling him, okay, here's what happens next. She is a reaper. So she is in charge of collecting the person who has passed away and taking them to this place where he can go and he can cope with it, do whatever he needs to do to accept it and deal with it, and then be ready to move on. However, that is going to happen. So the place where she takes him is this tea shop in the middle of the woods, and it is run by a man named Hugo, and it is a refuge basically for people who have passed and for them to cope and, deal with it and all that stuff. Now, this is a tea house that it actually is open to the public and humans come in. They cannot see the ghosts. They cannot see anybody, who is not alive. And there are multiple people there who are not alive. So, he's watching all of this happen, and then he's like coming kind of to his own conclusions and learning, how to exist in this state that he is in and what's going to come next, and trying to come to terms with it and accept it. And he has a hard time. He struggles with that. So you see him dealing with it, and you see what happens to people who have not dealt with it well. And you're hearing stories about other people who've been there. You're seeing new people come in. And you see the bond that he starts forming with the people who are in this shop. including Hugo, who is a human. So yeah, I loved it so much, you guys. His writing is so good. I can't get over it. It's beautiful, beautiful writing. The way that he just weaves words together is perfection. I loved Wallace. I loved Hugo. I loved May. I loved Nelson. I loved all of them. There were parts in this book that had me cackling out loud. And I mean, like, I stopped what I was doing so I could laugh. He has a really canny way of making you feel something really deeply, and then the next sentence you're laughing. Like, it's phenomenal. It really is. So a huge hit for me. I read this with my friend Jen as well, and she loved it just as much. So very happy to have another TJ Klune under my belt. Very happy that now I have read 2 books by him, and I can officially say he is a favorite author, because I felt the same way about The House in the Cerulean Sea. And I'm going to be picking up more of him very soon because I just can't get enough. Loved it. 5 stars, obviously. And yeah, definitely a highlight. Okay, that was a lot. I feel like I've been talking a long time. Sorry, I was going to try to keep it together and keep it concise, and I don't think I did that. But apparently I had a lot to say. All right, so let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you're planning to pick any up now after hearing my review. Are there any that you're going to skip based on my review? I'd like to know that as well. And I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.